Hi and welcome back. We're talking today again about the Nikon D780, and 3 days ago I did my first wedding with it. Very briefly, for those of you that don't know, a month ago I changed from my Sony A7iii, which I've had for 2 years for shooting weddings, families, boudoir and all the other stuff I do, and gone back to Nikon and back to the D780. If you want to understand the reasons for that and all the ins and outs of that, then I will link below to the video where I explain why I changed. But the question today is, how did I get on at my first real wedding with a D780? How did it compare to the Sony A7iii? Let's take a look. So my gear that I took along to the wedding, I'm one lens short, but the gear I took along was the D780 and the D700. The 780 has 50mm Sigma f1.4 art lens, and I also on the D780 use the 135 f2 defocus lens. On the D700 we've got the 35 f2 D lens and the 17 to 35 zoom lens. The lens I'm missing is an 85, and I haven't bought one for two reasons. One, I want the 85 1.4 D lens, which is very difficult to get actually, at a reasonable price anyway, and 97% of them come from Japan. Not too keen on buying from Japan. I'd rather have a UK one, so really just waiting for one of those to come up, and I'm not absolutely sure I need it anyway. We're going to take a look shortly at the photos from the wedding. One of the key issues that I was able to resolve was low light shooting. How does the D780 compare to the Sony? And I was able to resolve that issue because the wedding was, by the way, we are a few days off Christmas. It's December the 20 something. The day I did the wedding, it was a 3 o'clock ceremony. It was almost dark. It was 100% cloud. It was raining outside. It was in like the Ritz of Cambridge. It was a really old, beautiful hotel, huge, very posh, with very, very dark carpets, bookcases. You get the idea. About half a dozen wall lights in this massive room, and 2 chandeliers with about half a dozen candle lights in. It was really, really dark, and that was a very good test for the high ISO capabilities of this camera. Also gave me a chance to check the autofocus. What does it work like in low light? Now, I'm not talking about low light like we get on the first dance. That's a completely different ball game, and there wasn't a first dance. We're still in the days of COVID, and it was quite a short, I say short, it was about nearly 4 hours, but a fairly short wedding. There was no first dance and music and dancing afterwards, so I didn't get a chance to try that out. But at a ceremony I would never use flash, so the ceremony was shot with the ambient light, and many of the shots, as we'll see in a minute, were at 25,000 ISO. Something that I don't think I ever had to do with the Sony. I've got a picture there, which we'll look at properly on the screen in a moment, which was shot at 10,000 ISO, which is probably pretty much as high as I ever needed to go with the Sony. As I say, 25,000 on here a few days ago. It also gave me a chance to just get the feel of going back to a Nikon, and how did it compare to a Sony. Have I made the right choice? Very briefly, I think the answer is yes. I'm pretty sure the answer is yes, actually. The two reasons I changed from Sony were image quality, and by that I'm not talking sharpness, and creating an image which is an exact copy of reality. That for me isn't what photography is about. Photography for me, and the reason I've gone back to Nikon, is I want to create images for my clients which go beyond reality, which aren't a smartphone picture, which have more character, have depth, have feeling. It's difficult to actually pinpoint, say, that's the thing that makes it do whatever I want it to do. But just the look and feel of Nikon photos, especially with lenses like this and the old 35 f2 lens, they just give character to the photo. They're not as sharp as the lenses I had on the Sony, but sharpness isn't a huge deal. I do have one lens, the 50mm Sigma art lens, which is crazy sharp. It's as sharp as anything I've ever had on the Sony, which was sharper than anything I've had in the past. So that is a super sharp lens. And maybe it doesn't quite have the character that the Nikon 1.4 lens that I had when I first got the camera had. But the problem with that was it was just so not sharp that it really wasn't acceptable as professional photos. Whether it was just the lens, whether it's the design of that lens, it was the 50mm 1.4G lens, so it should have been good, but wasn't sharp enough, wasn't anywhere near as sharp as the 135 f2, and just on a different planet to this lens here. So this is pretty much the kit I'll be using from now on for weddings. So image quality, one thing that I've gone back to Nikon for, and I don't think there's any question that has been achieved. I'm getting the photos that I like the look of much more. The other thing was usability, ergonomics, and that kind of thing. When you're carrying this thing around for 10 hours, obviously I wasn't the other day, but I will be, hopefully, sometime next year at some proper weddings, you want something that's comfortable, that has got the buttons in the right place, that you can feel where the buttons are, that is just intuitive to use, it's fast, it's easy to handle, and you just point it, press the right buttons, and you just get the shot. Sony wasn't like that. I didn't find. Maybe you do. I am criticising Sony. I believe that that Sonys are built by technicians to prove that they can do it. It's not built like the Nikon is. It's not designed and built by photographers for photographers. I feel that this is a much better tool to achieve my objectives, and I think it's the right choice. What we'll do now is we'll switch over to the screen and we'll talk about the high ISO and the sharpness and the look of the photos, that kind of thing, and just see. I'll try and explain why I think that the Nikon, with this setup I have here, is a lot more fun to use than the Sony ever was. I never really thought the Sony was fun to use. This, sometimes I just carry it around the house because it just feels nice. It's beautiful and does a superb job. Let's take a look at some pictures. Okay, so what we're looking at here is a wedding from not last year, because that was with the what am I talking about? We are looking at a wedding from last year, from 2019, with my Sony. I think this was probably February, so only a couple of months after I got the Sony. You can see we've got a 35 1.4 lens on. Now I was shooting at f7.1 because I wanted everyone to be in focus. I think it's fairly obvious that we've actually got quite a lot of light. We've got quite a lot of wall lights around here. We've got some lights all around there. We've got ceiling lights. It's not too dark. We've got a lot of white on the table and the chairs. The walls are quite light, and yet when I zoom in, now bear in mind I've got some sharpening and I've got no noise reduction at all in. If we zoom in, hopefully this is coming out on the screen okay. On the recording, we've got a lot of noise. There is absolutely no doubt that that noise is pretty crazy. Now we can play around and we can get rid of most of that noise and get a fairly usable image, especially as being taken at 35mm. It's not intended to be a portrait shot. It doesn't need to be wonderfully sharp. It's there to tell the story of the people that were in the wedding. If we now look at a similar picture from a few days ago with the Nikon D780, what we're looking at here is, actually let's zoom out and look at the actual picture first, the wedding from a few days ago. and you can see what I was talking about at the beginning of the video. We've got a wall light here, we've got a few small candle lights in 2 chandeliers. The room is about twice as wide as what you can actually see in this photo, and there were maybe in the entire room 6 or 7 wall lights like this. Behind me are four windows which were quite large, but as I say, outside it was pretty well dark, and they had large draped curtains over them anyway, concealing most of the light that was coming through. You can see this was at 8,000. The picture we looked at just now on the Sony was 10,000, and if I zoom in now to look at the noise, again I've got no noise reduction on this at all. I've got about the same sharpening that I had on the Sony. I can't compare the two photos side by side without moving one to a different collection and all sorts of things. So I hope you can remember. If not, just nip back in the video a minute or so, have a look at the Sony picture, and then have a look at this one. And this one is just so much better. The noise in this picture is, well, I mean, there are some sections where it really doesn't need any noise reduction at all. The background here is absolutely fine, and that picture, apart from maybe just brightening it up a little bit, because it is a bit on the dark side, wouldn't need much more work at all. And that is it. It's almost usable as it is. Obviously I would do a little bit of noise reduction, but the point is, almost as far as I can, comparing apples with apples, I think the Nikon, as far as high ISO photography, is going to be a lot more successful at weddings, which there are quite a lot of weddings which tend to be a bit dark. Churches tend to always be dark, and country wedding venues also tend to have this sort of decor, you know, dark oak and quite dark furniture and that kind of stuff. It's going to be very successful. So we just now talk about lenses very quickly. So this was with the 50mm. I shot it at f2. I didn't, different to the other shot I did, I wanted the bride and groom to be the centre of attention here. I wanted people in the background to be a little bit out of focus. So let me find one that was in better light and can demonstrate the sharpness. So here we have a shot of the bride and groom outside in a corridor, which was still extremely dark, but I did have flash. I just set the flash up to do a few couple shots like this. So we're still with the 50mm. We're shooting at 1.4, and because I've got a flash, we're shooting at 80 ISO. If I zoom in, and I was obviously focused on the bride here, it does take a moment to render. There is just nothing that you would need any sharper than that. That is just insanely sharp. That's 100% crop. So really pleased with that. And let me show you one other lens, my 135 Defocus lens. And forgive me, I kind of lost the plot then. I think I said I was going to find a 135 photo to show you what that lens can do and why I love Nikon, why I've come back to Nikon. So this is with the 135 at f2, so it's wide open. Again, I had a flash set up, not bouncing, not pointed straight at our lady here, not at this. This was just bouncing off the ceiling, a couple of flashes, and it just, well, I mean, that's just a very simple edit. I just adjusted a few sliders here, and that's what we get. It's not a lot of work. It's very simple. Noise reduction, oh sorry, Lightroom is being unbelievably slow because I'm recording. There is a little bit of noise reduction on there, which I probably don't even need. Excuse me while I swear at Lightroom. Come on, it's because I'm recording. Yes, let's take some of that off. I don't think we need that at all. And as for sharpness, now remember, I didn't get the Nikon, I didn't go back to Nikon because of sharpness. I went back because of the image quality. But I mean, we're on 100% here, and absolutely with no noise reduction at all, and which of course at 80 ISO shouldn't need any, but nonetheless, even really close up, a fabulous shot.